Okay, this is Anthony DiCecco with the Anthony DiCecco podcast. This series is titled Confessions of a Reluctant Tennis Pro. We're back at the Grimmett, beautiful mansion in Chester County. We have Tony behind the camera, and I'd like to introduce Rosie DeSanctis, who is with me on this podcast.
Hi everyone, nice to be back. So, as Anthony said, the name of the podcast is Confessions of a Reluctant Tennis Pro. And in the past couple episodes, we've left a very important part of that title out, which is tennis. And your life, it kind of revolves around tennis. So I have to bring up the fact that, well, we'll talk about that this episode, but I know you played a lot of sports before you even became aware of tennis.
Yeah, I mean, the reluctant part of the title has to do with playing and becoming a pro and making it my career. I played football from a little kid. My dad played football and baseball, and with my brothers and my dad, we played football, baseball, basketball, hockey, everything but tennis. And so that's where the reluctant part comes in. And I really thought, it wasn't even in the equation for me to play tennis. I thought, I never even thought about it. It's not a team sport, and I don't come from a country club background. So golf and tennis, being from South Philadelphia, it never crossed my mind.
So what sports did you play and watch growing up?
So with football, I was a diehard Dallas Cowboy fan. I still am.
Wait a minute, wait. I gotta stop you right there. You live in Philadelphia, you're from South Philadelphia, and you're a Dallas Cowboy fan. How did that happen?
Well, I mean, when you're younger, you have a lot of heroes. And my heroes, my idols were sports players, professional athletes. And they still are. I still love LeBron James and, coaches and players. Today, I still admire a lot. Amari Cooper, another Dallas Cowboy. But Dak Prescott.
Who did you like growing up, though?
When growing up, I fell in love with Roger Staubach. I just thought he was the best. Captain America, comeback kid. My dad used to say, pull the chestnuts from the fire. And I watched him when I was 10 years old, and he got to the Super Bowl, and he won the Super Bowl against the Miami Dolphins. And since then, I was just in love with Roger Staubach, so I became a quarterback. And even though I don't have the size for it, I had a good arm. And so that was my idol. And then in basketball, I loved Pete Maravich. And he had the long hair and the floppy socks and the behind-the-back passes. And I loved the Flyers. I mean, to be fair, it's not that I was against Philadelphia sports. I loved the Flyers. I had every clipping when they won the Stanley Cup 2 years in a row. I loved Doug Favell. I loved Bernie Parent, Bobby Clark, all those players. And then I loved the basketball team with Dr. J and Moses Malone. And then I also followed the Phillies religiously. I loved Steve Carlton. So it's only the one sport, the Dallas Cowboys, that
you jumped ship.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this, because my brother, oddly enough, was a huge Cowboys fan and idolized Roger Staubach. And Tony Dorsett, I think, was on that team as well. And he used to run these football pools in high school, I guess. And if Dallas lost on a Sunday, he would get inexplicably sick on Monday and not go to school. Did you have those problems?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough enough not rooting for the home team, but with these particular Eagles fans, they really jump, and they hate the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think it's mutual. I don't root against the Eagles, but they really hate the Dallas Cowboys. And I had the same thing. They'd be screaming in your face, and God forbid, I'd just be praying that Dallas won. But if they lost, you would get it like first thing in the morning. So I had the same experience, yeah.
Did you miss much school, or?
No, I pulled up by the bootstraps and went in.
Oh, okay, all right. Now, how about when you played? You said you were quarterback.
Yeah, so I was a quarterback in middle school, and you know nobody passes in middle school, and when I went to high school, we didn't pass much either, and I was big on passing, and so I was a backup, and then they came up with a special play because I could throw, and they called it the Anthony Special, and they would put the whole entire line on one side and put one receiver on the other side, and I would take the snap, and I did shotgun like Roger Staubach because I was little, so I couldn't take the snap from center. I would take the shotgun snap and run to the right and then throw it down the left sideline. So we had a couple of long bombs, which was unusual for middle school, and I enjoyed it, and I played a lot of street football, and I had a lot of fun with it.
Right. Well, what about now? I heard there was an Anthony Special also in basketball. How did they modify the play in?
Well, so
different
with
sports?
basketball, I played on the high school team as a freshman. We were 32-0. I was a backup.
Really?
Yeah, we had a good team. I was a backup, and you know, you can't pass between the legs, behind the back. You can't do any of that stuff. And I
No.
just felt like really restricted, and I also wanted to play more than 5 minutes a game. So I went and joined the church league. And in the church league, you could do whatever you wanted. And we had a really good team, and we had a lot of fun. And they did another one where, we were able to do things that like highlighted my skill, which was my quickness. And I would take the ball at the top of the key, and everybody would spread out. And if I beat my guy, I could go in and shoot, or I would just pass to somebody, which is a lot like they do nowadays in the NBA.
They clear the lane.
Maybe
yeah.
I was ahead of my time.
You definitely you were you're ahead of your time. So it's interesting, Anthony, because you said you played quarterback and you were like what, a point guard, in basketball. And what did you play in baseball?
So in baseball, I was a pitcher.
Right. And in hockey?
I started out as a goalie.
Okay,
and
so
then,
to me, you're in the high intensity positions, the positions of leadership. You think that's an accident?
well, I think it's interesting because we just had a rehearsal for the band, and I tend to do a rehearsal. We do a rehearsal on the side each week without the guy that I play with, because he's so good that he doesn't need to rehearse. But we do, and I tend to take the lead there too. I mean, it's probably been a bone of contention in all my relationships over the years, but I just feel more comfortable. I put it down as being a firstborn. I feel more comfortable sort of directing. I mean, I remember in the neighborhood where we grew up, I would be the one knocking on the doors, getting the kids out to organize the football game, or So it's just something that I've done my entire life, and I enjoy leading teams. I like it, and somebody has to do it.
But also years ago, I had the good fortune of meeting Tug McGraw, and I asked him, what was it like to be on the mound, bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, Game 7 of the World Series? And his answer was, there is no place I'd rather be. And it takes a special kind of person to be that pressure guy. And you sound to me like you want to be the pressure guy.
I do thrive, and I'm going to steal his answer now the next time you ask me.
Right.
It's the only place I want to be.
Exactly.
Because I do feel comfortable in that situation.
Right. And some people would be like, no, that's too much for me. But you got to have that person who wants to be there. That's who you want there. So in summer of 1975, going into your sophomore year, right, in high school.
Yeah, going into 10th grade.
Something turned out to be a life changer, happened just in an innocent summer play in the street.
Well, there was a cute girl, Nancy Crane. I was friends with her brother, Martin, and Martin was a funny guy. Their family was pretty funny.
There's Jim too,
and
right?
there's Jim Crane too. We have history. They were the opposite of our family. So our family, we would be playing basketball or football, and my mom would say dinner's ready, and we'd say, yeah, we'll be in half an hour. And then in the Crane household, the dad came home with a lunch pail and sat down at 5:12 in the chair. Nancy would be playing piano. The mother would be making dinner. And Martin and I would be like, as quiet as possible, not to bother anybody. And then, it was just a lot more regimented. And but anyway, Nancy was obviously being the girl, she was a little different. Martin and Jim, they had a total line. But Nancy, one day she just had a racket. It had catgut. It was a wooden racket, and we were just hitting in the street. And I was like, hey, this is a lot of fun. So so it was. And it wasn't even really the summer. I think it was going into the summer. I think it was like in May, because there was a Memorial Day sale at Jamesway, which would be like a Target nowadays. And
I used to work there.
Did you work at Jamesway?
I did.
Yeah, that was. I don't know if are there a lot of Jamesways, but for us it was famous in our neighborhood.
Yeah, no, I don't think there was any other Jamesway.
That was it. Jamesway. I don't know where you got that name, but anyway. With the Jamesway, like your typical department
like Kmart,
store.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Kmart. And so my mom bought us $3 rackets for my brother and I. And to hear my dad tell the story, he always gives the credit to my mother, which will be a theme that comes up later. But he gave her the credit for starting us in tennis. And so we got the racket, and then, we had courts where we lived. They had 2 tennis courts. And that nobody used, and we would go down and there's like stories about us shoveling snow, because it wasn't like I had the privilege that I have now of owning an indoor tennis club and I could play. So we would shovel snow, and we just we worked as hard as we could, and then went out for the team in the spring. So that would be the following spring, a year later, of shoveling snow, practicing every day.
Okay.
No instruction, and then we decided to go out for the team.
So you felt pretty confident in your athletic ability when you went out for the high school team.
Well, the thing is, nowadays, right, if you're like Roger Federer has a team, he trains in a weight room, he has a nutritionist, there's so many things, the equipment's so different. But at the time, tennis, if you were a non-athlete, you joined the tennis team. That's really basically what it was. And I was an athlete coming to tennis, and I was like, this is going to be easy for me.
So it just wasn't as respected of a sport at that time? Is that why you thought it was for non-athletes?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, now with all the talks about health and longevity, tennis is like at the top of the list, checks all the boxes.
It does.
Everybody wants their son or daughter to play tennis, even in the inner city.
It's a lifelong sport.
Yeah, but no, at the time it wasn't.
Okay, so you tried out for the team, and then the first day of practice, something happened. What happened?
Well, so we went out for the team, and by then we knew people that were on the team, and Tim Irwin and Rich Braverman, and so we went out, and they kind of just shoot us down to the end court, to the bottom court, because we were new. And we didn't really take kindly to it, and and at the time, you didn't have a cell phone, so it wasn't like you could call your mother. I didn't have a license.
Well, what was wrong with the bottom court? That was court number 5.
Yeah, we had 5 courts at Coatesville. And, court 1 would have been better suited, I thought, because, I was coming on the team and I was going to be a star or whatever. And again, reminder that this podcast is coming from inside my head. But so I thought I was going to be a superstar and go to court 1 and but no. So we got pushed down by the upperclassmen down to the end, and then we just walked home. So we left. And I don't know why I did a lot of things that I did when I was younger, but I do have to put a lot of it down to having a twin, because it tends to give you the confidence to do something that you might not do on your own. Like, it's not like everybody against one person, it's everybody against 2 people, and sometimes that's enough power to do whatever you want. So we walked home, and we came back the next day, and we were allowed closer to court 1, maybe not on court 1, but maybe we got to court 2. And then we made the team, we made varsity, which was pretty cool.
And Russ Tapper was the coach.
Yeah, Russ Tapper was the coach, and he was sort of, I guess he was military, would be. And so this was another situation where the two cultures clashed. You know, we were raised in a situation where we were allowed to do whatever we want, wear our hair however we wanted, wear any clothes that we wanted, and Russ was very regimented. So you know from day one it was going to be an issue. And so the first year, Alex and I played doubles and for varsity, and it was fun. We had a lot of people come and watch us. A lot of our girlfriends came and watched, and we were pretty popular. You know, and it was pretty cool being on a tennis team, because before I was never a star, and then I was all of a sudden like elevated. You know, one of the 7 best players in the school.
Well, that's awesome, first of all, as a sophomore, but I wanted to ask you, did the fact that there was girls tennis and boys tennis that intermixed, did that sweeten the deal for you to go out for the team?
Well, yeah, you know how they always say people join a band, you know, to be around girls.
Right.
Yeah, and I just went to the courts every day, yeah, to be around girls. And it's funny because Celeste played #1 for the girls team, and Anita played #2. And I actually dated Anita when I was younger, and Celeste was my mixed doubles partner, and we worked together at Tennis Addiction. So it's been nice, you know, all these years later, whatever that is, 40 years later. But yeah, so it was a lot of fun. And then, you know, we went through the first season, and you know, about halfway through the season, I started playing singles. I played third singles. I beat out this kid and played third singles, and I was having a pretty good year at third singles. They usually don't have a whole lot of talent. It's a drop off after 2, and so I was having a pretty good year. And then I lost a particularly bad match in the third set, and I had a little temper tantrum, and it's funny because I had a bad temper when I was on the court in tennis, and
you
people,
did not.
but now Roger Federer did too. He did at the beginning too.
Were you idolizing John McEnroe at the time?
No, not at all. I liked Borg. I didn't even like McEnroe.
Right.
But I had it, and there's a story that comes a lot later where I was playing a match, and my wife was pregnant with our first child, and she was watching, and it was in Coatesville, and I think, you know, it's the kind of thing, like whenever I went back to Coatesville, it brought out the worst in me. That's what happened. And I would act like I was in like 10th grade again. And so now this is years later, and I was playing a match, and the guy was irritating me, and he was asking for the third ball, and I was hitting it out in the road, and it was bouncing off of cars that were driving by. And then I remember it was 4-all in the third set, and we had to call it because of darkness. So I had to come back the next day. I lost my serve. He held serve. I lost the match and lost the tournament. And I got in the car with Betsy and asked her to drive up the road. And then I got out of the car and broke my rackets on like a stop sign somewhere up the road. Again, nothing that I'm proud of. And Betsy, all she could think about was, you know, I'm pregnant with this guy's child, and this is how he acts. So anyway, back up to high school. But anyway, I was pretty much a hothead, and so I got on the bus, and Russ Tapper came on the bus and said, I can't sit on the bus, I have to sit outside and watch the rest of the team. And so I said I quit, got off the bus, and then I had to get a ride home.
Was this sophomore year? Or
This is 10th grade.
Okay.
Yeah, sophomore year.
Okay.
So my first year. So I think my record...
So you quit twice?
Well, so
the first day.
Yeah. So far, right? If you're I didn't count that one, but okay. So this is the second time I'm quitting. Now, thanks for pointing that out. And so what I did was, I quit again. And but you know, like I woke up the next day, and I mean, I lived and breathed tennis, so I wasn't going to quit.
Right.
So I went down and talked to Russ Tapper, and his office was down like in a dungeon somewhere. And all I remember is, you know, I had a big crush on Farrah Fawcett, one of Charlie's Angels at the time, and they had the famous poster with her with the red swimsuit on,
right.
the one-piece swimsuit, and I remember, you know, it was on his wall, and I was like, you know, he can't be all bad, right? Maybe the guy.
If he likes Farrah, he can't be all bad.
Yeah, he can't be all bad. So anyway, so I said, you know, I'm going to come back on a team, and again, in our house, if you would have said that, they would have said, okay, you know, Anthony changed his mind, go ahead. But he held firm, and that was the end of my season.
Wow.
So.
But you said you had like an 8-3 record or something like
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I was having success and I was loving it, so I was disappointed. But so I left, and then go back, and my dad, the kind of person he was, and my mom, they were like, questioning why he wouldn't give me a reprieve, but that's what it was, and you think I would have learned that lesson, but that's a lesson I don't know if I've still learned.
Right.
Like I don't accept what I don't like. What I don't agree with, let's say. I don't readily accept what I don't agree with.
Right.
And I'll go to the mat. So, anyway.
So junior year,
Right, so now.
you were doing well.
Yeah, junior year, now the 1 and 2 graduated. Alex and I became co-captains, and we played 1 and 2 on a team. And there were PIAA rules that said that you couldn't practice tennis until a certain date. You couldn't have formal practice until a certain date. So Russ Tapper would sit in his truck across the street and give us some balls, and we would just go out and hit for the first week prior. And it was always in the spring, and it was always windy, and it was always cold, and we were out there. But so anyway, when the following Monday came around for formal practice, we thought we'd play a little joke, and Alex and I wore tuxedo jackets over our shorts. And we emptied out a wine bottle or something, and we filled it with water, and we showed up at practice. And Tapper, I mean, sometimes I feel bad for that guy having to put up with us, but he has to name us as co-captains for the first day. We're in charge of the team, and we're looking like clowns with a tuxedo jacket on, and he's like, what are you doing? And we're like, he said it was formal practice. So we thought it was a clever, sophisticated joke, but he wasn't going for it.
That's funny.
So kind of, that was it. Yeah, I thought it was funny.
But I think it's funny too. But the season went well until the end of the season. You got into some hot water.
Yeah,
It's
so
cool.
so I forget, it's the stories kind of blur.
What about wasn't there something that happened at the Octorara match or
Well,
something?
we had problems with tennis because when we played in the street, we played football, basketball, and hockey. Every game ended in a fight, but nobody ever really took it seriously. You're just rolling around on the ground, and like, but somebody made a bad call, and we jumped over the net, and Tapperchai explained to us that there's no fighting in tennis, but we were, saying if you guys cheat again, we're going to knock you out. But so it was those kind of things. But it was something, because we did have some problems with school, as we knew in last episode, that we had some problems with school, and I don't exactly know what it was, but I got suspended, and I wasn't able to come back and play on the team. So. Yeah, and it always was towards the end of the year. Maybe the weather started getting nice,
Right.
and I was having more fun. And so I did lose, and lose a significant part of the season, which for the second year in a row would have been the Chessmont Championships, which were singles, doubles,
Wow.
and mixed at the time. They had a mixed doubles, which was cool. They don't do it today. So you had all those chances, and being number one on the team, I would have played singles, I would have played doubles, I would have played mixed, and so all that went out the window.
Yeah, that seems like a big disappointment. I'm surprised that didn't bother you more.
Well, I think, and one of the reasons that I'm doing this podcast is I wanted to, as a sidebar, my son had a friend that took his own life, and I'm sort of with my dad on how much I care and respect young people, and I love working with young people like I work with you. I love working with young people, and they just keep me young, and I respect them a lot, and it's going to be their world anyway, and in a lot of ways they know more than us. So I've always respected them, and I wanted to go to the school and sort of give my story, because usually what you have is you have a police officer come out and tell them what not to do, or you have somebody come out that's totally successful and they don't mention anything they just say, don't do this and you can be successful. And I always wanted, as a sort of like a fun thing to do, is to come and talk. And instead of telling them what to do, just tell them about, this guy that got kicked out of school, got kicked off of tennis teams. Pretty much, if you want to look at the outside, failed at every juncture. And then tell them the story about the guy that, has a family, a successful business, and is, respected in the community. And, most people like him. Most people like him. And that was the same guy.
Right.
And I thought, it would ring true that, like, listen, no matter what, you could come back from this stuff. So to be honest, I wasn't so devastated. It's not in my philosophy to be so devastated. So getting kicked off the team, I thought, well, I guess it was a rule. You got kicked off if you got suspended.
If you got suspended.
So, and then there was a probation period, and that just happened to extend past the season.
Now this happened, unfortunately, senior year as well.
Right.
There was
it's
a blood
like
drive.
Groundhog Day for me, yeah.
And an incident.
So I joined, So I joined the team, and then, it's a senior year, and I'm doing pretty well, having a good time, and thinking about playing tennis in college, and by now I'm the best player. My brother didn't beat me that day, one of the best two players in the school, and so I had a certain amount of respect for that, and I was having a good time, and they had a blood drive, and I'm always looking for a way to leverage whatever rules I could, and they had a blood drive, and you would go give blood, and I guess it would take maybe 10 minutes to give the blood, and you had to sit and eat some donuts and make sure that you didn't pass out, and then you go back to class. And I just extended it for most of the day and stayed, and then got suspended for that. And then what happened with that is that suspension was earlier. So even though I missed the singles and actually I came back for the doubles, but I think my brother got suspended and I had to play the doubles with the third singles player. I remember Darius Treadwell, and he was a chess champion. He used to play my brother. My brother was really good at chess, and they used to play each other. And Darius, I played with him, and actually was one of the times that Russ Tapper, I saw him happy, was we won a consolation match at the Chessmont Championships and were able to make it to districts for the first time. And he was, as in his coaching career, and he got a day off on a Friday, and we went, and we ended up losing in the first round. But so I did get to play one time, which was the doubles. And then the mixed doubles came around, and I guess there was a probation period that ended the day before the mixed doubles. And so, I had, figured out everything on paper, and I was like, I'll be back to play. So I talked to Tapper about it, and he said, no, it wasn't fair. Somebody else should probably play because they've been here the whole time. And I thought, listen, there's nobody more dedicated than me. Maybe not by the outside looking in, but from my side looking out, I was more dedicated to tennis and I loved it more. So anyway, I showed up the day of the championships. They happened to be at Coatesville, and Celeste was on the court with the other guy that was taking my spot. And so I just told him that, it was time for him to leave and I was going to play with Celeste. And I didn't know if he'd leave, but he left. So he left, and I was warming up, and Tapper said, no, you got to get off the court. And I was like,
wow.
I'm not leaving. And then the Calvin Beam was the
athletic director.
And Calvin Beam, I'm glad you remember this
Yes,
stuff.
I do.
And then Calvin Beam, he came on the court and tried to talk me into leaving, and I wasn't going. So he actually physically grabbed me and started dragging me, and then I was able to get my arm stuck in the fence, the gate, and he couldn't get me out. So he had to give up, and he called the police. And then when the police pulled up right next to the court, I'm not that stupid, so I decided I'll walk off the court. So that was my high school career.
Wow. Oh boy. But in spite of that, you still had this burning desire to play tennis, and you went out for the team in college.
Yeah,
At
so
Westchester?
Yeah, in the summer, I decided to go to Westchester, at the time, State College. Now it's a university, my kids go there. It's a great school. And my friend Tim Irwin, who graduated 2 years before, now played on the team. And in the summer, he took me over. I met the guys on the team. They said, I made the cut, I could get on the team. So I went and I played at Westchester. And that started another series of events. I used to practice a lot in the morning with a kid from England named Justin
Okay.
and McHugh, and we played together. And then, I played on the team, and I lived at Westchester. And, I still had the extracurricular activities that seemed to take over some of the, well, let's put it this way. If I would have put school and tennis 1 and 2, I might have done a little better.
Oops.
But what happened was I put, maybe partying and girls, and then maybe tennis, and then school, and I had the order wrong. So anyway, I was on a phone. They used to have a phone booth, and I was on a phone booth with talking to my girlfriend, and I guess we were in a little bit of an argument, and I hit the phone booth with my hand. I still have a scar, my tennis hand, and so I missed the spring trip, and the spring trip kind of would have is right before the season, and would have got me a spot on a team. So I really didn't have a spot on a team, and of course, they had enough good players that they didn't want to put up with some clown that was getting in trouble and this, that, and the other thing. And then we eventually got to the point where I got in trouble in school too. So I had these other issues. And halfway through, I think the dean sent a letter to my house talking about all the infractions that weren't actually documented. So they had some documented infractions, and then they had some other infractions, little benign things like driving across the football field to lunch or something like that, nothing crazy. But so they asked us maybe to leave.
maybe to leave.
So I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to go home. And my friend Justin, his roommate did leave and went back to England. He didn't like it in America. And so I moved in with Justin in his dorm, even though I wasn't allowed in my dorm. And I still practiced on the team, but I wasn't allowed to play. And
So
that's,
the coach was good with that.
Yeah, the coach was good with it. He kept
Okay.
me on the team because he knew I'd play the next year, which never did turn out. But so that brings me to one of the biggest things that happened in my life.
Why you didn't play the next year.
Yeah, or why I left. Yeah.
Right.
So
May?
yeah, it was in May of 1979, and it was, I think at that time you were pretty close to if not graduation, right? Because you don't go into June in college. I think it ends somewhere
Right,
in
it
May.
ends in May.
So this is May 19th, so maybe the day class ends or something like that. And in Westchester, they had, a lot of people in Westchester went to Kennett Square on a certain night. I think it was like a Wednesday or Thursday night, and they went to the Anvil Inn. And, it didn't seem to matter back then. People underage had fake IDs or whatever. But the people I was hanging around, they graduated. I was younger. And I had a friend, Chet Stewart, and he graduated with a chemical engineering degree from Lehigh University, bright kid. And in the year before I went to college, I hung around him a lot, and we had a good time. And I got pretty close to him and his family, his sister Cindy, his mom and dad. And then Tim Irwin lived in the dorm that I now was living in, and he roomed with Mark Track, who was the captain of the team. And then we had a girl, Colleen, she was there, and we had a guy from Coatesville, Don Weaver. His dad owns Weaver Motors. He was there, Justin. So I think 7 of us got into Mark Track for graduation, got in a Econoline van it was a camper van. It had like, you know, a pop-up top, and you could sleep up top, and you had a sink. I don't know if it had a bathroom, but so we all piled in, and he drove to the Anvil Inn. And we went to the Anvil Inn, everybody was drinking, and you know, again, this was a time before Mothers Against Drunk
Right.
Drivers, and you know, the disclaimer here is that I don't support drunk driving or driving under the influence in any way, but it's just what it was then. And the Anvil Inn would allow, you know, people to drink, drive away, whatever. And so anyway, we were outside in the parking lot getting ready to leave, and Mark, didn't want to or let anybody else drive.
Right, because they wanted you to drive.
Well, we were thinking I could drive, like I had experience, you know, and driving while drinking, which isn't something to be proud of. But, you know, this guy was not a big partier, and I feel bad for him because, you know, he didn't get in trouble every day of his life like I did. And but he didn't want to give it up. He just got it. You know, it was like one of the first days he had the van. So he got in, he drove, and about halfway home, we ended up, you know, people were like, I was in the back, people were like, go up to the front and talk to him. So about halfway up is the last thing I remember. And later I would find out we went off the road, we hit a telephone pole, went airborne and hit a tree. The van went on fire, and when I woke up, I was in a field somewhere, and I couldn't stand up. And it turned out that I had a broken leg, laceration, 14 stitches. I had broken ribs, a bruised heart. I had a burned foot, you know, other little things. So I'm in the field, and, you know, I don't know really where I am. And, you know, the ambulance came, and they took everybody to hospital, and I was put in intensive care. And Tim Irwin, who went through the windshield and broke his neck, was in intensive care next to me. And he had to wait for a halo to come from Arizona. And so he was screaming, he was upset. And there were people in there to varying degrees of you know, how bad they were. And then I remember, you know, I didn't know when I was going to get out of intensive care. And I remember, you know, all the accidents I've had in my life. When my parents came in at 2 o'clock in the morning and looked at me, I had tubes everywhere. You know, I did know that this one was more serious
Right.
than the other ones.
Right.
You know, and you know, years later, when my daughter bit her tongue, you know, I was a wreck. And that's one incident where she actually hurt herself, never anything else. And I was a nervous wreck as a parent. And I think back to my mom and dad putting up with all the accidents all through the years. And now, you know, this, which was pretty scary. Because,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I easily could have died.
Absolutely. And Mark was in very serious condition as
He
well.
had 60-some stitches in his head. Don Weaver had a broken ankle, which is, it really doesn't do justice. It was severe. They had to put his ankle and leg back together. And Colleen got off pretty scot-free. Justin got off scot-free. And being in the back, I think, helped. And then, I don't know if that works in an airplane, if you're in the back of the airplane, but they were in the back and it worked out. And then, you know, while I was in intensive care, I had a bruised heart, and you know, my parents were talking to me, and I was trying to count everybody and see where everybody was. And I wanted to know if I had any permanent damage, like if I was going to be in a wheelchair or something, and the doctor said I would have no permanent damage, I would recover, so that was something that was a plus. But I was trying to get, and I had smoke inhalation, which lasted for 3 days, so my breathing was pretty short. And actually, I was never in that bad shape ever before in my life. But the next night, somebody went around that same turn and hit a telephone pole, and he had a piece of telephone pole in his head, and they took my monitor off and gave it to him because he needed it more, and then he ended up dying. They gave him last rites, and so it was tough. But I guess at some point my dad had to be honest with me, and he told me that Chet didn't make it.
That
So,
was so sad.
yeah, I mean, it was terrible.
I remember going to school that day in class with your brother, Adam. And that's how I found out about it.
Yeah.
He was talking to someone else, not right by me, and I heard him say something about an accident and Chet Stewart. And Chet used to come over the house and play basketball all the time. I have a very vivid memory of him coming in our living room, and we had this like plush green carpet, and it was, the nap was so thick that you could write in it. We used to write in it all the time. And Chet one night wrote his name and underlined it a couple of times, and like that's as if it was yesterday, you know, and he used to play basketball with all you guys, and it was so shocking and so tragic.
Yeah, well, the other part of it was his father died 6 months prior of cancer. And now we're talking about young people, because so if we're 21, 19, I was 19, he was 21, 2 years older. You know, his dad could have been like
In his 50s, right?
50s, right? Like younger than I am today. And you know, when they always say, like they say that only the good die young, I mean, Chet was just like, he was great. He was so, like, he was just a great kid. And he was really close with Tim Irwin too. And
Right.
until this day, Tim, we get together on Chet's birthday and we have a drink for him. And, you know, we don't really celebrate May 19th, although every time it comes around, Tim reminds me how blessed we are that we're still here. And you know, again, you don't think about it, right? But, you know, when you're getting ejected from a van and landing out in a field somewhere, and then you're thinking about, like, I think they do say, though, that, like, right around 18 or 19 is the best time if you're going to jump off a bridge or something, because you're not fully developed enough and you could take that kind of stuff. So I do know that it's, if you're going to get a male at that age, has the best chance of coming back from a severe accident. Not that I would be like trying to get hurt, but like I wouldn't want to get ejected at my age. But at that time, I brushed it off. I just brushed it off. I had a cast. I remember driving a stick shift car. I remember playing basketball.
So there was no trauma in this for you, in the sense of, I'm afraid to get back into the car again.
I didn't really have a problem with it, you know, just because, and I mean, this is sort of the way I think too. I mean, you look at your options and what choices you have. So if I get back into a car and I'm afraid or scared or I can't drive, that's just going to ground me and I'm not going to go anywhere. So being practical about it, I mean, my dad's a scientist, my mother's a psychologist. You know, the science part of my brain just said that, you know, I have to go on. You know, I have to work. I have to do whatever I need to do. I want to still play basketball. I want to do what I want. So, and it was coming into the summer. Now, to be fair, I did break 2 sets of crutches, because after waking up like 4, 5, 6 weeks, it was 10 weeks in the whole thing, and not being able to do much except, you know, walk with these stupid crutches. I did get, you know, a little bit impatient with it. But Justin really had a tough time of it. I remember he would lay in the back of the car and he would scream. And
Well, because it sounds like he was awake and remembers most of it because he didn't get
yeah, he
hurt.
didn't get too hurt. So he probably saw everybody at the scene, and that was
Right.
something I didn't see. And you know, originally they arrested me as I was on the gurney. They arrested me. And because I looked like Mark a little bit, we both had like facial hair and dark hair, and I couldn't really explain to him that I wasn't driving at the beginning because I had a hard time breathing, and so finally they got that out, and then, you know, it went a little further down the road where Chet's mother, and I can understand her being distraught. Her husband dies of cancer. They only have a daughter and a son. The son graduates college, and the day he graduates, he dies.
Oh my God.
And it's traumatic. So she really wanted, you know, justice, which she thought meant, you know, Mark would have to be responsible for it. So most everybody in the van said that they didn't remember what happened, and all I could say that I'd remembered is what I shared here, is that, I offered to drive. Maybe he shouldn't have been driving. We went off the road. We hit something and somebody died. And but my lawyer told me that if I told that story, that Mark would go to jail. And so I had, to decide whether, and maybe this is the way we grew up in our house too, but we're not real big on revenge. Like, I didn't see how putting Mark in jail would bring Chet back. And again, if Chet wasn't so close to me, I might have looked at it differently. But with him being so close to me, I don't think he would have wanted me to do it, no matter how many people did want me to do it.
So you didn't feel any kind of disloyalty because you really loved Chet and you had a great relationship, and you really felt that he would be on board with
Yeah,
that.
he would have never wanted somebody to go to jail. Again, unless you could bring him back, and, it wasn't going to work that way. So I went on the advice of my lawyer, but he didn't show up with me at court. So I went in court. They asked everybody. Everybody said they didn't remember anything. And I took the fifth because I didn't want to actually lie and say I had no idea what happened, but I didn't want to testify. So I took the fifth, and the judge, because I was the only one that actually could say anything, and I guess they wanted somebody to say something. And so they threatened contempt of court. And I remember I called my lawyer on the phone, and I said, Mike McShane, infamous Mike McShane, and he said, you just tell them you take the fifth and ignore what they say. So I did, and they finally let me go. And I remember Cindy's boyfriend coming at me later, like, threatening me, and I was like, look, he just came on the scene like a month before, and I'd been through so much with Chet. I'd had dinner at his house, and I knew his sister for so long. So I was like, don't even bother, stay out of it. And, it was sad, but
Of course.
so if I thought about how my high school years ended, this one took it up another
Wow.
notch. And that's how
Do
my
you keep in touch
college
with the
ended.
family at all?
I don't. I don't even know. Is his mother still alive?
I don't know.
Yeah. So I don't know. Now Cindy, I do, because I see her once a year. So.
Okay. Very
But
good.
but I think of him a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So, well, that's really sad, Anthony. I mean, that's a great tragedy, and from someone who knew him, not as well as you guys. I was, a little kid, just horning in on a basketball game here and there, but you always looked up to your brother's friends, and it was definitely a very, very sad loss for the family and for everyone that knew him. But it's a testament that the people who continued on were able to turn their lives around and really, honor him by the way they lived their lives afterwards. you know?
Mark ended up, as a family, became a school teacher. He taught tennis. Tim Irwin, I still work with him today in the USPTA. He has a tennis recruiting business, and he's remarried to somebody he's totally in love with. His kids have grown up and become tennis pros. Justin, I lost touch with. I wish I could get back in touch with him. But yeah, so people came out of it okay.
That's great. So next week, what's on the docket?
Well, I think that's chapter 1 of tennis, of a reluctant tennis pro, because there's another piece to it. Like, I guess we can't draw the conclusion from that story that I would actually stay in tennis for the rest of my life, right? It doesn't sound like I had too great of a start.
Yeah, you didn't have the mojo going.
But that was the baseline, and there was nowhere, no pun intended, baseline, but there was nowhere to go but up. But next week, I think it's time to start discussing my mentors and influences, because for me, it's they're the things that have gotten me through. I know there are a lot of people that have closed systems where they maybe have one person they can talk to, and I have well, we'll find out enough to fill an episode.
Well,
This-
Anthony, I can't wait personally to hear about all of your influences and mentors and where you went from here. So we'll find out next week. Peace.
Peace.